expression, the pain and sorrow of my life. I put it through cards.
What have I become?
Like, and it's always going to be life is a hustle.
Do I really want to be a singer, like a full-time performer?
And suddenly you're in a different country, different culture, like a shock. This is essentially like the last place that I really saw my whole family together. And then after this, my dad moved to Canada. And then we moved to this much more smaller place. And this is actually the last place I saw my mom before she passed away. And suddenly you're in a different country, different culture, literally like a shock. Because I feel like art for art's sake is so self-serving.
And the first time I got really high, it was here, and I was 16.
My name is Harvey Nickel, and I am a visual artist, activist, and also a storyteller. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, so I do it all. I make clothes. I'm currently producing a graphic novel. I also paint, do murals. Before I focused on visual art, I was really into DJing and music and just a different type of medium. And then as I grew older and kind of tried all of them, that's when I picked the medium I feel I connected the most. The way I would categorize my art would be visual autoethnography, which is auto, which is about yourself, and ethno, which is about the broader culture.
Did you go to school? Did you go to art school?
I'm currently going to art school.
You're currently going to art school.
I'm currently in AU Arts,
Nice.
majoring in sculpture.
Oh, nice. I thought we just say you major in sculpture, you're done.
Yeah, no. I'm currently, which is just funny to me too. Art school is if you're Filipino, it's art school. Why don't become an engineer?
Or a nurse.
That's literally, I was at New Horizon Mall doing that event for and there was a tito there who was just the whole time it's you should become an engineer, while there's more money in that. And I was if I wanted more money, then I would have been an artist. But that's Filipino mind, right? It's just if it's not making money, why are you doing it? Art is a voice. It can be used for many different type of things, but for me, I try to utilize visual art and storytelling as a sort of a way to communicate. You don't need to know how to read or write to be able to understand visual art, And that's why I think with my practice, I try to read a lot of books about our history and then depict them. Growing up in the Philippines, I was a big history buff. And so I learned all about the Ilustrados and the revolutionary people there. And with that comes Juan Luna, which is an artist from that era. And so from there, I saw the way they use art in trying to bring about change, which ultimately did. For me personally, a lot of my art deals with identity and social commentaries about back home where I'm from in the Philippines, and also just the experience of being an immigrant in a settler colonial country like Canada. As I said before, art is, especially right now in this era where postmodernism, it's a lot of art for art's sakes, right? Very abstract stuff. This is kind of the exhibition was kind of a reaction to what has recently happened in the Philippines. As we know, the second regime has came through, And this is a culmination of all the rage that we've been had. And that's why I feel like, it shouldn't be lighthearted. It should be as heavy as it is, because it is a heavy topic. You know what I mean? And yeah, and so our original idea was to kind of create a parody of all the paintings that was like essentially bought by Marcus's using the people's money. So this is actually a recreation of the reclining woman number 7, which is a Picasso painting that the Marcuses have bought during the dictator's power. During the raid that happened, I think in 2016 or like something, like where the commission and audit, you know what I mean, the people that are trying to like get all of the stolen wealth tried to raid their house, and they hid that painting. And what eventually happened was, like, once Marcus Jr. won the election, they took a photo again, and now it's back where it was.
This is all my anger towards the family. And the atrocities, the pain, the struggle, everything that they did to the Filipino people. And I hope my anger is well depicted in this painting.
This is essentially like the last place that I really like saw my whole family together. And then after this, like, my dad moved to Canada, and then we moved out of here, and then we moved to this much more smaller place. This is actually like the last place I saw my mom before she passed away. And so it was like a skinny in Tondo. This is actually only like a block away from each other. The colors of it too, I wanted to like have like this one to be much more like brighter and much more lovelier, while this one is gloomy and blue. You know? Honestly, I remember, I mean, like being a kid in Tondo, you have like 800 kids you can play with outside. Some of them are still living there. When I'm come there, they have kids now. My last years in Tondo, this is when my mom met my brother's dad too. This was also the place where, the last place I saw my mom alive before she went to the hospital. I was left in the house to kind of take care of everything while they were in the hospital for like weeks. After that, it was just like chaos ensued throughout my whole entire life. And my grandmother coming home, she kind of took possession of it. And then during the funeral and the wake, it was horrible because a lot of my family members and just people that I didn't really know would come in and out of this house. And by the end of it, like a lot of our stuff was gone, essentially, things that had like sentimental value for myself. And from here, I was brought to Bulacan in a garbage bag, passed on to the next person to take care of me, I guess. So this place had a really, really hard times being there. But it was also like, I had a lot of cherished moments in there. This used to be a subway right here, but look, it's closed down now. I heard like the owner was the owner's wife passed away. But this used to be where we would hang out every time we get kicked out of the shelter.
So how old were you then?
I was like 15, 16, around that time. I was still going to St. Francis High School too. I was born and raised in Tondo, Metro Manila. My mother passed away when I was 10. And my mother and my father has never really been together throughout my life. But so like my dad at that time is already in Canada and already had his own family and everything. So I had to go to my dad's parents and stay there. And from that point, I continued education there till high school, and then I stopped. And eventually, my dad was able to petition me to Canada, but having that like no relationship prior to that, it would just clashed. And being at that age, that you're like a teenager, that's like when all the hormones are coming in, and suddenly you're in a different country, different culture, literally like a shock. But then like, I felt like they never saw it in my perspective. You know what I mean? It was like how hard it would have been being a teenager moving to a country and all of these things, right? And so we clashed a lot, and I ended up deciding that like I'm not gonna go through this stuff. I'd rather be homeless and be on the streets than like have to deal with that. And so I've decided to take that risk and like run away. When when I just run away immediately, I couch surf for a while. So all the new friends that I met in school, some of them are Filipino, and I was like, yo, can I run away, like, can I sleep in your couch? And so I had a lot of people from that point that helped me, and that's before I decided that shelter would probably be a much better thing, so I'm not like, you know what I mean, in everyone's houses. This used to be Woods Home Exit Youth Shelter. That's like a specific shelter for youth at risk, so runaways. Like meeting all of these like, you know what I mean, runaways. We started a lot of troubles. It was a troubling times. The first time I got arrested and the first time I got really hot, it was here, and I was like 16. So like, doing all of this like petty crimes was kind of like my way of just like distracting myself. And I remember being in that couch, sitting down there, started feeling the high. Suddenly I had to focus on what was my life situation, and it was looking bleak, man. And so, after that night, they called the EMS on me, and then they brought me to the hospital. Then the next day I went back here. Like nothing happened, That shelter, actually, they kick you out every morning because they don't have funding. They can only keep you from 6 p.m. till morning. And so every day for like at least 2 years, I was living in that shelter and going to high school. So I was going to high school and going to the shelter. Like the shelter was my home. It's not a long-term place, but I was like one of the few kids who were there for so long, because like the transition there was quick. Kids will be there and then 3 days later they're gone. I still feel privileged being in Canada. You know what I mean? Like I could be homeless back in the Philippines and it would be 10 times much more harder, At least here there are services like here, even if they kick us out in the morning, they still have us during the evening, right? Which is like very rare for a lot of places.
And you recently got commissioned to do something else again. What's that? You just posted it.
Oh, that's it was a sneak peek, so. Oh, okay. But I might be doing a mural for Señor's Pizza. Oh, wow. Which is a Calgary frickin' staples, But this is the first iteration of this. I'm trying to make like a series. This is a goal. My next one will be the Tres Marias. Yeah. These are all like disco balls, mirror. Then these are the cutouts of that map. Currently working on a graphic novel. Actually, that graphic novel was the birth of my activism in 2020, you know what I mean? This graphic novel, I started writing it during those times when like I felt like I needed to do something, you know what I mean? And I couldn't figure out what it was, and the way it came to me was to tell stories, And I was a big hero, and everyone's Filipino hero would be Jose Rizal, And Mans wrote a book about what's going on back home and told our stories in our perspective. To me, that's kind of like what inspired me to write this book during like 2020, and now it's progressed to 2022 and like I'm actually like doing it, hoping to finally like be done volume 1 by January and then work on volume 2 and 3 for the rest of the year. This is actually inspired by the
indigenous boat, Austronesian boat called Balangay, which is like one of the oldest and most ancient type of ship that's been found in Southeast Asia. That's when I painted it. It was during the Container Art Fest.
When I was homeless, I started going to this after-school program. It's called Refreshed, where they would teach us graffiti and essentially just like, different art forms, like hip-hop, like rapping, DJing, graffiti. And that's where I started to like dabble with this.
When you went to the art program, that's when you realized that you can make a career out of art.
That wasn't like my original thought of. That program probably like helped me a lot to like focus, put my energy into something more positive. And also through that, I met so many artists because the way the program is, they get like professional artists to be the mentor. And so I met so many professional artists as a youth who's already working into different fields, you know what I mean? And they were kind of like the catalyst, because then you see that like it is possible, because if these guys are doing it, I could do that too.
In 2019, I had my first solo exhibition before the pandemic. And that's when like I think things really started to like snowball for me. And then just like literally a week before the pandemic happened, I had like, that was my second solo show. And then the pandemic happened. And then I was, Avenue magazine reached out and was like, yo, we want you to feature you for the best dressed. I don't know, that was a random thing as well. And then that snowballed into like doing a lot of work, doing murals. And then in 2020, that's when I started doing art full-time. And so during the pandemic, I was able to secure some residency through C Space. I was part of their incubator program. And Arts Commons, I started doing the cabaret with them. And yeah, it just like keep on snowballing. I feel like I was lucky enough to be able to like start doing this before the pandemic, because if I was started to do this during the pandemic, I don't think I would be doing this as a full-time job right now.
The ceilings were all paintings of like the youth that stayed here, right? The thing that I painted on mine was put on top of my stall. And it was like talking, I forgot exactly what it was talking about, but it was like, it was a painting that I painted. And so for me, like seeing my own creation in front of me every night before I go to sleep was something powerful, I think. I mean, that was kind of like the first time that I started painting again, you know what I mean? When they would give us like materials, because art materials is not cheap. And that's where like also I found like Refreshed, which is that after school program, is through here. Like they posted a poster here and I was like, yo, I'm gonna check it out. And then that snowballed into like me doing the art now, you know?
How would you tell Harvey's story?
How would I tell Harvey's story? I don't know, I feel like that's you guys' job.
One word to describe Harvey's life.
An uphill battle. That's 3 words. What is my dream? I honestly just want to be able to do art for the rest of my life. That would be ideal. And be able to support living with being creative. I also hope to come back home in the Philippines and like stay there for longer. Kind of bring back my art there, because like I've never done any shows there whatsoever, or like, you know, but I know a big group of people there in the art scene, and I want to be able to go there and transfer. I feel like a lot of people's trajectory is they leave the country and go somewhere else and do it, but I want to go back
and just like bring what I've been doing here there, you know. And so that's definitely an aspiration for me, and yeah, hopefully, you know, just continue doing what I'm doing.